Hello, hi, my name is Susie Dix. You can see I'm trying to fix this necklace. Welcome to the Huddle on a beautiful Monday down in San Clemente, California. Thank you for joining us today. Today's Huddle is called Government Relations, Facts or Fiction. And so I hope to give you a lot of facts about what the Government Relations Committee has been doing the last few months through the changes of the pandemic. Want to go over a little housekeeping first. Obviously, you can see me. I cannot see you, but that doesn't mean we don't want you to be involved. At the end of the presentation, I'll be answering questions. If you look on your display, you can see there is a section called questions. So throughout the presentation, if you have a specific question, please type it in. And our two monitors, Irene Wetzel and Sue Breyer, will be helping monitor those and will address those. We also will have all of you muted, so I will not be able to physically hear you, but we will listen through the question box. So here we go. Good morning. I'm going to shut myself off and go through. So as you can see, as you know, my name is Susie Dixon. I've been your State Chair of Government Relations for the past 3.5 years. This morning, we're going to go through and talk about how the Government Relations Committee has been meeting the challenges through advocating and leading through this virtual advocacy. Our responsibilities and procedures, who your area representatives are, your division government relation chairs, what they should be keying in on and doing with the area representatives, truly how the pandemic has changed advocacy, and virtual advocacy, our new mode and something that we should keep in mind that will be a part of our new advocacy for the next few years. As you know, the CalRTA Government Relation Committee has 12 areas throughout the state. Our sole mission is to protect the retirement of our educators through pension protection, affordable health care. And we also have our 4 legislative priorities: the CalSTRS retirement, Social Security and federal issues, health care, and public education. Those are all part of our CalRTA platform that you can find on our CalRTA website in more depth. The Government Relations Committee is an advisory committee. We review legislation under the guidance of our 2 legislative advocates, David Walrath and Jennifer Baker, who analyze legislation and present it to the committee for possible recommendations on positions. As you know, there's thousands of pieces of legislation in the state. And so they take the time to only review the ones that meet our 4 platform areas: the retirement, Social Security and federal, health care, and public education. After they bring it to our committee, we review the legislation and we make a recommendation on a position of support, approve, possibly oppose, or watch. After the committee makes their recommendations, then I present it to the CalRTA Board of Directors. And the CalRTA Board of Directors is the decision-making group. They make the final decision on the committee's positions, and that becomes a part of our focus. You can see throughout the state, as you know, California is a huge state, and this map shows you our areas and our representatives that we currently have on the Government Relations Committee. Kayla Meadows is Area 1, Rick Light, Area 2, Clint Ritchie, Area 3, Sandra Price, Dale and Linda on Area 4, Tim Gearhart, Area 5, Barbara, Area 6. We're still looking for someone in Area 7, So if you are willing to step up and help out, we would so appreciate that. Area 8, Nancy. 9, Bob and Joyce. 10, Joanne. 11, Lee and Marcia. And 12, Roberta Whiteman. As you can see, some of the areas cover a larger geographical space. So it's important for them to be able to connect with their divisions. And having our ability to connect through the internet and using our virtual meetings has been a godsend for all of them, because they cannot actually travel. Even during non-pandemic times, it was difficult to get to a lot of these areas. The biggest thing is, how has the pandemic changed the way the Government Relations Committee works? We started 3 years ago meeting virtually. We increased immediately in April to meet twice each month. We changed our March and April alerts to focus on social advocacy. And if you receive our alerts, you remember these were more activities to keep you engaged and involved with activities you could do with other members or virtually visiting a museum. We were really trying to be sensitive to the needs of our members at that time to make sure they still felt connected as a community. We have increased the number of legislative alerts since April. We were using up to 3 a week. We have Tuesday alerts that will focus on federal issues, Wednesday on state issues, and Thursday on additional federal issues. We worked on creating a CalRTA virtual toolkit that's online and ready for you to access and use. We worked on and updated the advocacy action section on the website to be more precise and specific, that you could just go to a link and pull up the materials that you need. The leadership team has been meeting with out-of-state representatives to encourage more co-sponsors of HR 141, the repeal of the WEP and the GPO. And we are continuing to do more informational webinars. We've covered webinars on legislation, we've covered webinars on how to use the virtual advocacy, and we'll continue to do those. How can you help? This is where today everyone, and especially all of you who are interested in on this webinar, can see that it's going to be much easier to connect with our elected officials if we stay on top of it through virtual advocacy. Our advocacy action section has been updated. You can see it's more streamlined. We have the division resources. You click on that link, you'll get a multitude of resources that you can refer to. The virtual advocacy toolkit, ways to walk through what to do, materials you would need to send before a meeting, checklist, current legislation, talking points, more materials to distribute, and this and that. Updates on maybe possible state legislation. We have up above, you can see our 30-second pension update. We try to address any concerns that are immediately expressed to us, and especially at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of concern over the pension and the funding throughout the state, how that would affect it. One of the biggest things that has changed since April, and thank you to Debbie Pate Newberry, she has made it so easy if you are on the email alert list to send our legislative alert to elected officials. The email automatically populates the legislative assistant's email and the message. All you have to do is put your name and send. Takes less than 2 or 3 minutes to do 10 each week. We know they work. I was, in fact, last week I received 2 emails from some state representatives out of state who received over hundreds of emails in one day and wanted to be removed from the list. Good news is We know you're doing your job and acting on the legislative alerts. Of course, I responded and said we would be more than happy to remove them, but could I get another email address for their legislative assistant? And we would love to have a virtual meeting to explain the 2 penalties. You can see this as a sample of my own when we were contacting, for example, Nancy Perry at Chairman John Larson's office. I clicked on her email, came up, the message came up, and I was able to send it immediately. Before, when we did all of the legislative alerts, in the last few months, from Tuesday alerts that have addressed the Bipartisan Women's Caucus, to the Wednesday alerts that were addressing the non-sponsors, male and female congresspeople, to the Thursday alerts, we hit over the 100 senators on Thursdays. We have hit over 45 women on the Women's Bipartisan, and we are continuing with the women on Thursdays who have not co-sponsored, the congresswomen, and on Tuesdays with our male congressmen who have not co-sponsored. So by the end of October, our legislative alerts will have targeted close to 200 of our elected officials. That's why, yes.
Excuse me, there's been a request that if you turn your camera off, then the screen will get larger for them to see more of the PowerPoint.
It came back on its own. I'm sorry. Thank you for that. Also, if you look on the virtual advocacy toolkit that we've been talking about, that is, can you see now, Irene?
We'll have to ask an audience person.
Because the camera's been off. I don't know how it popped up. But if you go to the virtual advocacy toolkit and you click on that, you can see this is your checklist for how to set up a meeting, how to find your elected officials, whether they're state assembly, state senate, or federal representatives, a sample email that you can copy and paste, talking points, and general information for state and federal legislation. If you need assistance with this, all you have to do is contact myself or your area representative on the Government Relations Committee, and they will help. We can also help set up now I'm not sure why, but I'm frozen, so I'm just going to keep talking through it. My computer's having a lot of fun here today.
It's working fine.
Okay, but my camera keeps popping up. Okay. Love technology. I'm going to talk through the next one so we can get to our meeting questions. What can you do? Basically, if you have not signed up for the legislative alerts, it's imperative that you get to those now, because what we want you to do is to be able to receive the populated messages. If you miss one, you can go to the archive under legislative alerts and act on it. Doesn't matter if it's the actual day, it just matters the number that are acted upon. When you are talking to an elected official virtually, you pretty much follow the same rules as when we could do them in person on our advocacy days in Sacramento and in DC. We want to be able to be sure that each person who's involved in your meeting, and we recommend you keep it under 5 or 6, has a talking point. Someone takes notes. Make sure you're focusing on what your issue is and that you've provided them with the handouts and materials beforehand. Also, know your legislator. When we've done the leadership calls and we've talked to out-of-state representatives, it really has made a difference when we can give a personal connection. if they've done something in the Social Security area for their state, or if they're a past educator, or if they're family members in education. It kind of softens up the conversation and they're more apt to listen and come on board to our information that we're providing for them. Really important to stay connected. Act on those weekly alerts, schedule those virtual meetings, talk to your government relations people, whether they're a division or they're your state area representative. It's key that you know what is going on in the government relations area. If you'd like to schedule a virtual meeting with your division, you can contact your area representative. We have a government relations account for a GoToMeeting, or we can work through Irene and do some webinars. The biggest thing I want everyone to walk away with today before we go to questions is you are the most important person on this. You are the one that needs to be the advocate for all of us. As a group, if we don't give up, things happen. As of right now, on the federal legislation, we have 255 co-sponsors. We are so close to that 290, and we only have the next month and a half, basically, to get our message out loud and clear for those last elected officials who need to jump on and co-sponsor. So you'll notice that the majority on Tuesdays and Thursdays, some of those may be repeats from the Women's Bipartisan Caucus. Most of them are in states that have been affected by both penalties, but as we remind them over and over, all states are affected in some way. So now let's go to our questions. I'm sorry, I have to apologize. My slideshow did not continue to move forward.
Thank you, Susie. The first question is from Gail Matson, and she asked one that's related to your discussion. And this has to do with why aren't all CalRTA members automatically included in the legislative alerts when CalRTA has their emails? Members shouldn't have to sign up. If they don't want to participate, they can click delete.
Right. Well, if you have a current email, most of them do sign up automatically. But for privacy issues, sometimes the emails are old, so they get kicked out. And I think currently when I spoke to Johanna a couple of weeks ago, Johanna, we only have about a little close to 17,000 that are active emails. Yes, we hope that when you sign up, your email's current. If you have been a member for a long time, go to your site and make sure that the email that's listed is the one that you are currently using. And that may be why some of them aren't receiving them automatically.
So this question is bigger than it looks. The person, this is Donna Clark, and she would like to understand the watch position. And I recommended that you might want to go through all the bill positions.
I will do that. I'll focus on the ones that we use most often. So support is if we take a support position, it's approved by the CalRTA Board of Directors. It means that we will put our time, energy, and money, usually through the PAC, into helping support that bill or legislation move through. Approve means that we approve of the position of the bill or legislation, but we're not going to be focusing on it as a number one issue or putting time and money as our priority. Watch means there has not been a position taken at this time. Usually what that means is we're going to be at the board or the government relations committee needs additional information before we decide on a position. So additional information, watch just means no position taken at this time till we review additional information. And then oppose is just what it says. We oppose that legislation. It doesn't hit our platform, doesn't, it may go against some of our securities for retirement. So we work through those.
So to watch something, does that mean it can actually change the bill?
They can be re-reviewed if additional information is requested. Yes.
So bills are amended, in other words, by the legislators and the committees?
Well, no, what these are positions that CalRTA has taken. So if we look at legislation, and it's like this year, for example, the committee looked at 70 pieces of state legislation. But because of COVID, the state decided it was imperative for a bill to move forward, it had to be COVID-19 related. So the majority of the bills are what we call dead. They died, they could not move forward. They were not going to meet the needs for COVID, for healthcare, for public schools in that area. At this time, only 3 are moving forward that we presented to the board of directors. And yes, in the state, they can amend a bill and we may take a watch position, but usually by the time we're looking at it, the bill is what we are addressing. The support, approve, watch, oppose, those are the positions that the GRC recommends to the board of directors, and the board of directors takes a final decision on.
So Marilyn Smith has a question about a term, populates. Could you please explain the term populates? I'm not sure all members understand the term on our context.
Good question, Marilyn. That is, populates just means that when you click on a person's name on that ledge alert, it directly goes to your email address. Up at the top of the email, it just shows the email. It's already formulated. Populate, formulate. So it has the person's email address. In the body, it has the message. And all you have to do is sign your name, type your name in. So populate means it pops up. It's there. It's so easy.
So Mary Dixon would like to know, can we get a list of the people who have not signed on? And I'm not sure quite with Mary's question, signed on to which?
Probably, I'm assuming HR 141. And I have a list, but generally if you are doing the ledge alerts, those are the ones we are focusing on. And if you want to email me directly, I can send you the list. I will say it's imperative that if you are going to email them on your own, make sure you use our messaging, that they understand that this is not a single state issue. This affects all states, because a lot of times they're confused when they get messaging from California members.
How are we coordinating our WPGPO repeal efforts with other states and unions around the country?
We have been working in coalition groups throughout our own state, but in other states, we have been working with them through Angelique Hill. She's our CEO. She has some groups she works with. When her and I were in DC, October of 2019 at a conference through NRTA, we actually sat with a lot of the states that were affected. Interestingly, California is fortunate that we have such a large group in our CalRTA retiree organization, and we have the 2 paid advocates. Most states that are affected are basically a smaller retiree group other than Texas. They don't have the funds and the time. So we've invited all of them to use our materials and our ledge alerts. And that's why last summer, Debbie Pate Newberry and I worked on making the advocacy action section on the homepage. You don't need to be a member to access all these materials. We only ask that people keep our CalRTA logo on and that they can utilize anything that we have.
So that question was from Sam Frankel. And we have another related question from Gail Matson. And when we reach 290 and the vote passes, assuming Congress, the House, won't it just sit in the Senate with the other hundreds of bills under the current Senate majority leader?
Another great question. And you know what? Probably, most likely, yes. And that's why we changed our messaging to ask for it to be included in one of the stimulus bills. When I contacted Rodney Davis, the author of HR 141, I contacted his chief of staff, David Ross, in beginning of April to touch base. What can we do? How's it moving forward? He reported that it was so close that the Congressman Davis had put it in the first stimulus bill, the CARES Act, and it was very close to going through when they were all pulled back and told to return home and vote from home. And then if you recall, there was the chaos of the one congressman from the South who demanded they vote in person on the CARES Act. They all had to fly back to DC for 24 hours. And a lot of the provisions that were included in that first stimulus bill were completely removed because they needed to get the funding for the personal protection equipment. They needed to get those $1,200 stimulus checks out and the additional help with unemployment. So that's why we're trying to circumvent going through the Senate and going to asking for it to be put in one of the stimulus bills. And they're still working on the next one.
And also it will be helpful in the new Congress. The more attention a bill gets this Congress, the stronger it is for the next one. Kayla has quite a few questions, and I'd like to ask her to unmute herself, as I'd like her to kind of qualify. She states that some people complain about too many emails from CalRTA, but you can only sign up for the alerts. But you can only sign up for the alerts, right? Do the members know that? And then she goes, oops, does the membership. So Kayla, do you want to unmute yourself and identify, put more clarity to what I said?
I just want to make sure that people know that they don't need to get all the other emails from CalRTA. I mean, from CalRTA, that they could just submit the alerts, right? They could only just get the alerts, correct? Because some people are not signing up for the alerts thinking that they're going to get constant email from CalRTA. That's the feedback I got.
I'm not sure what other emails go out other than the e-news connections. And if there's, do you know what specifically they're wanting to stay away from?
No, I just had some people say that they took their name off the list because they were getting too many emails, and I couldn't understand. I don't know enough about the organization to know anything more.
I'm assuming they're referring to the number of ledge alerts we did this summer. This was a big push. Obviously, as Irene kind of veered into, we're heading into the end of the 116th Congress. That doesn't mean this is the end. It means if we can get that many co-sponsors, we start the 117th Congress, hitting the ground in January. and getting them to resign. We were on such a movement until the pandemic hit. And then, as you know, legislation focuses on how to get through this pandemic, and other areas more than a lot of things took a back seat. But other than e-connections, I'm not sure of other emails they would receive, Kayla, on a regular basis. And I know it was a lot. There were 3 each week. But because of the simplicity of just signing your name, it really was a small amount of time for a huge problem.
Maybe it's time to try again to get those members resubmitted or committed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. And on that, I think what's a good point is as you talk with other members, if you can ease that fear of receiving so many emails and how easy it is to act on them, that might have them come back on.
And also, I believe the only other emails that are sent from CalRTA is the once a month, one for division resources,
Right.
and one for the general membership. So the board, so for the general membership, it's only one additional one a month. All right, it is Mark Allen has asked a open-ended question. It looks like he asked it more later. And Mark, if you want to unmute yourself, he has said, is it true the GR, and then it stops because it looks like he added, is it true the GR and the PAC could have different results in supporting or not supporting a bill? So I think you want to clarify that the bills do not go to the PAC.
Right. The bills don't go to PAC, the propositions would. And the PAC is the Political Action Committee, and they are a separate entity. They have separate bylaws and rules from the CalRTA and from government relations. So yes, they could have a totally different focus. And if you were, I'm sure a lot of you just received the donation request last week for the PAC, and that is essential for us to keep going on any legislation, through the state. So yes, I hope you did that.
So Mark, does that answer your question?
More or less.
Okay, thank you. Anthony Mendez has a question. What is Selma for informing members about propositions, especially since GRC and board could have different opinions?
Well, what we're doing is Jennifer Baker and I are just starting informational webinars on the propositions. We are not going to, most of the propositions don't meet the CalRTA platform. There's only 4. But in the past, if you were able to have in-person meetings, you could have someone come and speak to all of them just as an informational session. And so we're going to be doing that on all the different propositions. And
Thank you. Okay. So Steve Click will ask, what is the difference between the CalRTA position and a CalRTA PAC position, which you've more or less answered?
Right, they can be different. And like I said, the Political Action Committee is under a whole different set of rules. They are the committee that we use funds to move towards getting something passed. Usually, or if it's serious enough, I'm sure they would support funds to oppose something that would harm our retirement security.
So Linda has a social media question. This is Linda Hall. Why not offer a virtual lesson for members who are interested in establishing Twitter communications with legislators? You have great information in the advocacy toolkit that could be virtually shared. I think this kind of virtual communication is the way of the future.
I love it. Thank you. I do, as you all know, if you've heard me before, I do love Twitter. It's simple, it's easy. You can instantly contact someone who you're not a constituent of. And that's a great idea. We could schedule a webinar and have everyone basically be interacting with their own phone or their iPad. I find it easier on my iPad to have the message and tweet away. So great idea. I'll add that. Here we go, Irene, another webinar.
And that would be an excellent one for the CTC and the GRC to function together to make that work. And moving along, this one's from Jean Mundell. How receptive are members to Congress and the U.S. Senate to emails from non-residents of their state? They usually ask what state and district that you live in.
I think, to be honest with you, they're very receptive because of our messaging says how it affects public servants, and now we've included and some military in all of our states. Out of close to 150 contacts that we've done so far, I've had 3 requests to be removed because they did not like receiving that many emails in 1 or 2 days. So they're pretty open. They were open for us to have virtual meetings, even though they were all out of state and were very interested. So 3 out of 150, I'd say they're very receptive and respectful. I know some of our members will email me and say, the email didn't work, it bounced back. I do test emails at least a week before I changed each one of the ledge alert contacts. What happens sometimes the 2nd or 3rd week is they'll drop the email and change to a new one if they get too bombarded. So that just means that our members are again acting on, and we're starting to follow up. So hopefully that will encourage a few more.
So I wanted you to know every so often we get a message to you, Susie, that says thank you for all your work. And it looks like we have about 6 more questions, which should end us up about the right timing. But Steve Click has asked an interesting question about, and there's always questions on this. Can divisions take their own position on local issues and or local political offices?
That's a great question, Steve. Why would I not be surprised you asked that? And we're going to be going over, we're actually going to be having government relation workshops at the end of the month with division and area reps. It's really important that we understand that we can only take a position that CalRTA Board of Directors has adopted, even at a local issue. Doesn't mean you can't take a position as a retired teacher or as a group of retired teachers, but it's imperative that we don't put the CalRTA name or logo on a position for something that has not been approved by our board. Because we have to focus on what meets our platform. I always use the analogy, years ago, we can't save the whales with CalRTA. Doesn't mean we can't save the whales. I'm a member of so many organizations and I act on so many of their alerts, but I make sure that my CalRTA signature is not on those. I just put, California Retired Teacher.
So Sam Frankel has another question, and he keeps working on this, bless his heart. Are we doing any coordination with unions that represent public employees affected by WPGPO?
In California, we have a retired educators group. So we work with CTAR, CTA, AXA. We're not a union, but we have the community colleges. We all meet on a regular basis. A couple of years ago, I was given the list of all the unions throughout the US that were fighting the 2 penalties. And I contacted each and every one of them. There was about 50 some. I heard back from maybe 5. It's an interesting process. They tend to want to fight the battle on their own, but we're just continually pushing and hoping that we get more coordination among them. We used to work with the Texas Teachers Union a little bit more, but you know, Congressman Brady has the bill that only works on repealing the WEP. So that doesn't help the majority of our teachers in California. We don't.
So,
Okay.
excuse me, I'm sorry. So John Graham wants to know, is it not true that some people that sign on, the more pressure there is for the Senate members who are being pressured, and is close elections with actual support in the US Senate?
Yes, and that's why we are not giving up. We did contact, like I said, every state, every senator. We did all 115 each week because the companion bill is Senate Bill 521. So we wanted them to be aware of the fight is still there. Kamala Harris co-sponsored early on with Senator Feinstein. So I think it's imperative that we understand that now that she's the vice presidential nominee, continue to email her. She's one of our senators in California, that we're not giving up on this fight. And a lot of House races are going to be very close too in some of the states. So it's important for them to understand that the number of public employees in their state that are affected is usually quite large.
So Donna Clark would like you to know that she does not get any emails other than the ones that she signed up for. So she also wants to know, doesn't the PAC have to follow the board vote? And I think you've identified it, that, is that correct?
Yeah, they're a separate group.
So has the PAC taken a position on Prop 15 is her question.
I know, unfortunately, you all, I don't know if everyone knows this at this time, but we've suffered a terrible tragedy in our administration. Our president-elect passed away just a little over a week ago, and Rich was part of the PAC. And so they've had one meeting, and I am not a part of the PAC, but I know they're going to continue to move forward on that. So I can keep people updated, or you can contact, we have Chuck Denon, Jim Mahoney are on the PAC, I believe Greg Barker. Steve, are you unmuted?
No, he's not. I will unmute him. Okay, Steve?
Steve, aren't you on the PAC?
Yep, I'm on the PAC. We did discuss it middle of August, and at that point, the criteria, as you said, is a separate entity. The PAC, even though it's a CalRTA PAC, Political Action Committee, it has a separate set of goals and objectives and how-tos, just like you mentioned. We did discuss Prop 15. We took a vote, 2 for, 2 against. And the 5th person would have been Rich Gibson. And we postponed it until we could get his feelings on it. And then we were going to meet again, and then he passed away. So we have no position, set position. It was a 2-2 position taking. So it's still, the ball is still up in the air.
Do you think you'll have another meeting?
Yes, I believe that we have one set up. I can't tell you the date right offhand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
So there's a question, another one from Mark Allen, and I've unmuted him so he can explain. Could the emails, I assume he's talking about emails from the state, could be emails from their own personal divisions. Mark, you want to qualify that?
That was just a response to people getting too many emails. They could also be getting emails from Constant Contact through their divisions, because I know of 2 divisions in my area that have Constant Contact, and therefore they could be getting emails not only from the state office, but they could also be getting it from their own divisions. That's all.
Oh, so that's the case where people are forwarding their emails that people have already received, and so they're getting duplicates.
Right.
So from Jerry, and I think any additional questions after Jerry's will be answered. I'll send the list of questions to Susie so she can email you the answers. So in closing, Jerry Dunham writes, at times it seems like email message to representative is the same several weeks in a row. Is that by design?
Yes, it is by design. We usually do a 3-week campaign, and that way, as you know, the more you read, the more you see, the more you hear, the more you listen. So we try and hit it within a 3-week campaign. The senators, we only did 1 week because we wanted to get through all 100. And now we've divided up the last remaining that we need through October. So we usually, it's just a 3-week time frame. And the idea behind that is they see it once, it might be pushed aside. They see it twice. For example, last week when I received the 2 that were commenting how many they received, they've been on the email list for 2 weeks. So they were set to be off after this week anyway.
So I have to admit, I'm sorry, but there's one follow-up question from Anthony Mendez, that kind of interesting question. He wants to know, what is the plan for involving the other 1,700 members who don't get these emails? How to move forward on this?
And again, Anthony, we are constantly reviewing this in the GRC committee. Any suggestions other people have, I think, we take them, we honor them, we will act on them. In the past, we were able to go to fall workshops and spring workshops and motivate people and show them how easy it was to advocate. Today, we have to do it virtually. So if we can get divisions, if they're doing a fall workshop and they invite myself or their GRC representative, area rep, they can go through all this. And when they see how simple it is to make a difference, most people jump on. This summer, we increased our number of those who registered for the emails by a couple thousand. And I think, thank again to Debbie Pate Newberry for making it so simple.
So I just want to let Kayla Meadows and Jerry Dunham, Maggie Hamilton, Gail Madsen, and Donna Clark, who says thanks again to Steve, know that their questions will be forwarded to you, Susie. And in a day or 2, you will receive a follow-up email from this presentation where you can, where in the comment section, you can ask additional questions and they will be sent to Susie. So if you could respond to those emails within a week, that is when I'll forward them to her. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. And again, thank you to Sue and Irene for their help with monitoring, and all of you who had attended today. And have a great day and see you at the next webinar.